Okay. Not sure what happened there. Honestly, don't know. Had to go and re-engage all sorts of things to get it to work. Not sure if this is working or not. Hopefully it is. Hopefully the video and everything is working. Sorry, do not know what happened there at all, because I was just happily chatting away. And no power cord, nothing got kicked, but it seems to be Restream shut down on both channels at the same time for some reason. And I do not know why. I'm not sure why it decided to shut down on both at the same time, but it did. And it's reset both channels as well. No sound. No sound. There's their sound. Is there not sound? Yeah, it's basically it's YouTube was doing weird things, and I do not know why. I'm gonna have to have a chat with it. I'm gonna probably have to have a chat with Restream. I can guess I'm gonna have to have a chat with Restream at some point. It works pretty darn well, and it's pretty darn good, but it does sometimes muck around. It didn't like the boat with the armoured cars. It now seems to be happy, and I've now got Restream up. Its bitrate, it keeps worrying about the bitrate, and honestly, I think it's the upload speed of the channel. Let me just try something. If that makes it happy. We'll see if that makes it happy. Because I've tried to set a bit rate of below the level to make it happy. Because apparently the bit rate had gone over it. Anyway, so if you can sort of consider the value of this river. As I was saying before, I'm not sure if I was interrupted, I was sort of talking about the size of the vessels. The reason why it's worthwhile having those forces, it's worthwhile you having this sort of vessel and the other vessels, you know, that they have, that are present for Romania, are literally the value of the Danube. I've had this discussion with people recently, not actually, when I say recently, more recent than... Yes, Gareth, that would be really kind if you could show me that at some point. Moment I'm using Restream, which I pay some money for every month, which works quite well, but it does go weird occasionally. yeah, the whole point about Romania at this point in having this force, there was often discussions, even prior, especially prior to the Ukrainian war, that, you know, did you need these forces anymore because you were in such a peaceful area? Danube's a peaceful river, you know, it's well behind lines, it's, you know, it's fine, it's in a safe zone. And you sit there and go, well, actually no, because it's value. And this is the key point. If you want to shut down these economies, if you want to shut down the Romanian economy, if you want to shut down the Hungarian economy, if you want to shut down, to an extent, the Austrian economy, but definitely the Serbian and Bulgarian economies, you shut down the Danube River. If the Danube River gets shut down, you're in trouble. And in answer to your question, Melanie, the gun was not firing over the crew. If you go to this picture, it's firing over a flagstaff, not the crew. As you can see it's not that big. You can see some of the man turrets give you man mounts give you an idea of how big the crew are versus the vessel, and it's not firing over them. Take care, channel or channel. I think it's more. Yeah, this is technically technically how this system works for me is I stream to Restream, and Restream streams it to both YouTube and Twitch, and currently they're telling me I have excellent connection with both. I think I had the bit rate turned up a little bit too high. The bit rate keeps going higher than 5,000 kilobytes. And it shouldn't be over 5,000 kilobytes for Twitch. And YouTube also finds it annoying, apparently, if it's over 5,000 kilobytes. So I'm going to have a conversation with it about its bit output. Let's on to we'll see if that helps it makes it slightly better. The gun was firing, yes. Yeah, but the thing is, these are naval personnel, not infantry having guns firing at them. And how do I put this? It's kind of like artillery firing guns. You build up a certain thing of you're used to it. A lot of the examples of infantry being rendered useless by large guns going off near them has happened because those infantry were not as experienced about artillery going off and what it's like. Yeah, I've turned down the bit rate myself. Manually. I've turned the bit rate down to 4800. And hopefully that keeps it less than the 5,000 required. It's got it close to the 5,000. But it's less than 4,800 kilobytes per second amount. And its maximum it's got to be less than 5,000 kilobytes per second for Twitch and YouTube to be happy, apparently. Basically, I had it too high, apparently. The trouble is, it's adjusting the settings to deal the new house and the internet rates the new house versus the old house. Anyway, let's get back to the British Danube flotilla. Why does the Royal Navy have a flotilla on Danube? And, well, basically, it comes to do with 1914. There is the campaign by the Serbs against the Austro-Hungarian Empire, and the Royal Navy sends up HMS Glowworm. Yes, an insect-class gunboat. They send it up and other vessels up towards Baja in Hungary under Captain Vernon Haggard at this point. And this is not him as a captain. This is him later on in life, when he is far, far more senior. By this point, he's a vice admiral. having a chat in 1930 with the Mayor Malkin. His commands end up including the American West Indies station. And basically, he's a very experienced Royal Navy officer. He was born in Bengal, India. He was a nephew of Sir Henry Rider Haggard, who wrote something like King Solomon's Mines. You might have heard of it, you might not have. His brother was a diplomat who was Consul General in New York during World War II. And there's a few other sort of quite famous connections in his family, but mainly Haggard is a naval officer. He took part in the Benin expedition to Nigeria in 1897. He was in command of HMS Boadicea in 1911, the destroyer. He also commanded HMS Blenheim and HMS Good Hope and HMS Vulcan in between 1912 and 1913. And he would command a submarine flotilla in 1913. Pretty much, he has what you would call an active career. His technical charge is not just in charge of the flotilla, but also the naval brigade on the Danube. And the Danube flotilla, as it's more traditionally known, he technically commands it. And then he gets command of HMS Ajax, a battleship. Okay, she's a King George V class of World War I era, but, you know, she's a fairly decent ship. Hey, fellas, over. I have 13 Vexus 13. Yeah, I hope things are working better now. Hopefully it's all happy now. On Twitch and all these things. Twitch is just putting in a... I noticed Twitch is putting... Oh, that might be it. I forgot to do an ad, didn't I? YouTube must have thrown a mucky because I forgot to put an ad. And yeah. Now it's happy. Now it's happy. Now Twitch and YouTube are happy. Oh, happy days. Happy days. That explains it. I forgot to put in an ad. YouTube must have thrown a wobbly and caused trouble restream. Isn't the first time it's done it. YouTube throws a wobbly, Restream has a panic attack, and then both go poop. I don't know. No, Shameless Book Plug doesn't count. Can I say that? Not on YouTube, because if I turn on the automatic mid-rolls... I can set it the furthest I can set it. I can set it to every 30 minutes. So I've set it to automatic, and we'll see if you can put up with them being every 30 minutes. That's the furthest apart I can manually set them to. So let's see. I've now set it on auto. We'll see what that does like tonight for this one. So anyway, for the Royal Navy, the Danube Flotilla is about supporting, as I said, the Serbian campaign. It's about supporting the Serbs in their fights, in their attempts to hold off the Central Powers. And if you think about, go back to again this map, and we have a look at Serbia, and where Serbia is, we've got Romania and Serbia, Bulgaria. These are all core components of the forces fighting the Central Powers. Or rather, Bulgaria's on the side, theoretically, of the Central Powers. But they're also, Serbia's in here, right inland, and they're still managing to reach it on the Danube. They're still managing to push through, thanks to Romania, thanks to the work they're doing on the Danube. The fact is, the Danube is always a bit of a interesting thing for the Bulgarians to try and fight across. I'm drinking iron brew, the same as I always am. Now, for some reason, and I will never understand this, the Serbians decided that it was going to be called a punitive expedition when they advanced it. It's kind of like, the special military operation. This is a punitive expedition. You're launching a major military force of several 100,000 soldiers into a war. Yeah, I don't think this is a punitive expedition at this point. It's punitive to someone. The fact is, the Central Powers will suffer almost as many casualties as Serbia and Montenegro do in defending themselves. Yeah. There is a reason we're going to be talking about the Serbian flotilla in a second. If you're wondering what I'm doing, I'm patting the dog. But yeah, the Royal Navy are sent in there to support this, and they stay. This is the fun thing about the Royal Navy. Once it gets a place, it's very hard to get rid of it. It's kind of like most infestations. You have to. It takes a lot. It's usually eventually they decide to go rather than you manage to get them rid of them. The Royal Navy are there from 1919, and actually, honestly, from 1914. But it's the British Naval Mission in Serbia and various other things, and the British Naval Brigade. And then it's 1919 they form a flotilla. And they are there as a flotilla till 1926. They still have a vessel there. Now, if you're wondering what the British have going along there, they have HMS Glowworm is the Glowworm, which you can't find a decent picture of. But I have a picture of... can I find out which one I've got the best picture of? So I have a picture of HMS B, which was one of our sisters, which is fairly decent when scaled up to this screen size. So please, apologies, but I don't have a picture of Glowworm. So B is my only option to really show it off to you, if I can show it off to you. Where is my picture of B? There's my picture of B. B. Glorious B. So yeah, this is an insect class gunboat. And she's actually... The thing is about the insect class is they are initially built for the Danube. They are initially built for the Danube. They are as a class, they were given called the large China gunboats because that was a part of the whole Royal Navy disguising what they're for. But Gnat, Mantis, Moth, and Tarantula are all sent to the Mesopotamia campaign. But the rest, quite a lot of the rest, get sent to take part on the Danube and the Dvina. You know, they take part. A glowworm eventually ends up, along with Cicala, Cockchafer, Cricket and Moth and Mantis, on the Dvina River in Archangel, doing those duties there. And they mainly spend their interwar period in the Far East to try and monitor what the Japanese were getting up to in China on the Yangtze River. But, you know, they're useful vessels. But originally, they are built with a plan of going to the Danube. They are built to do it. They're designed by Yarrows on instruction from naval constructors. And they have triple expansion engines because it's felt that those can be more easily supported by the local infrastructure, where they're going to go. They're armed with 6-inch guns, one fore, one aft. They're armed with 12-pounder guns, one fore, one aft. They're armed with 6 303 machine guns. Now, some of them end up with pom-poms, some of them end up with 3-inch AA guns, some of them with Lewis guns, and all of them have... The armour is described as improvised. Yes, HMS Cockchafer. The fact that so many of you do have the sense of humour of teenage boys does not surprise me. It really doesn't. But yeah, basically, once the Royal Navy are there, they're not going anywhere. They're rather happy to be there. They're rather enjoying themselves. And they use the Danube Flotilla to cover being involved in a lot of things in Europe. And being able to express themselves on a lot of things in Europe. You know, it's typical British behaviour. We would prefer to be able to show we can get to you than actually get to you. We prefer to be able to give you a sort of a presence and go, hello, we're here, than actually have to be there. And that's the thing about the Danube Flotilla. It's great for showing that we are there. It's great at that. Sorry, I think someone's asking for a bio break, just judging by the way he's just plopped up. Be back in a second. Could have done that earlier when the thing went wrong. Could then use that as a quick cover. How almighty God.
Go out as you go.
Hello. I wonder if they saw your brother come in. Did you happen to see a corgi come in here? Yes, there's CTs, there's the corgi treats, yes. A corgi did come in here and say hello. Oh, right. Now we had a Serbian Navy. That's right. As I was saying in Blue Sky yesterday, every World War I naval battle is basically HMS Fluffy Kitten versus the written von murder boat, and the Fluffy Kitten normally wins. I would say it's HMS. It's usually the written von murderer boat, but usually yes, yeah. I'm absolutely the man on the bow. Yeah. Well, let's be honest. The Serbian Navy is all about the river warfare. They are all about the river warfare, and they are. They're capable. Now, the history of the Serbian River Flotilla is it's founded in 1915, being its current form since 2006. Technically made up of 500 personnel with 29 vessels to this day. Currently classed as a brown water navy. Their motto is for freedom and honor of the fatherland. That's the official translation. They are an interesting organization. They patrolled the Danube, the Sava, and the Caesar rivers. And they also, the thing is, they're interesting enough, they also have roles such as environmental policing, counterterrorism, border security, as well as being a naval branch, a riverine branch of the Serbian army. And they trace themselves back to the troops who were guarding things like the port of Belgrade against the Ottoman Empire in the 16th sort of century, 16th to 19th century period. They were often very specialized personnel, and they almost sort of ran the sort of riverine galleys in this sort of period. They used to operate as sort of the... Okay, I'm going to pronounce this. I'm going to pronounce it terribly, but you know, please note. And I would like to say this specifically to a friend called Anna. I am apologizing for what I'm about to do to your beautiful language. Do note, I understand it's horrific. Please do not listen, okay? I know you occasionally listen to my videos. Turn off now. I know you tried, but I also know how good I am when it comes to languages. The Chaika, which was crewed by roughly 30 to 50, and it would have an officer, an armourer, drummer, helmsman, roughly 30 to 40 oarsmen, and basically this was the troops who manned these were critical to try and defend the rivers from the encroachment of Ottoman forces. They were literally having galley warfare on the Danube, and the Serbian troops were at the front of it. Pretty much, can't guarantee, it pretty much is convergent evolution. Also applies to World War II, where a master race of U-boats were taken out by HMS Peony. It gets worse Garrus, look up HMS Kingfisher, and just remember she does actually disturbingly successful against the submarines. It was kind of nominative determinature, nominative determination. Now, they got their first proper patrol vessel, as we get on Sun, when they're formed officially formed in 1915. They get something called the Jada. Now, here is the interesting thing, because I found a photo of that claimed to be of the Jada. But then I showed that photo to another friend, not Anna, but another friend, father, who is a bit of a historian of this. And he told me it was not the Jedi, and I should not use it, and it was definitely wrong that it was not the Jedi, and he didn't even... Okay, I went, okay, fine, I won't use it. Can you find one of the Jedi? He's now hunting for it, but he's sure that the photo I had is not, so that's why I'm not using it. That's why I'm using photos of their current-ish vessels. Now, thankfully, of course, Serbia was on the winning side after World War I. And they were part of, technically, Yugoslavia. And technically, therefore, they are the vast majority of the Yugoslavian flotillas. But still, we're going to talk about Yugoslavia in a bit, because Yugoslavia actually contains more, or gets more than this. And the Danube flotilla, the Serbian vessels and Serbian forces stay as part of it. Because very much what happened was the separate states maintained their detachments within the structure of the Yugoslavian Navy. So I'm going to talk about the rest of the Yugoslavian Navy and some of the vessels they added onto the Danube flotilla, but the fact is the Serbian vessels say it's part of the Serbian section of it. When Yugoslavia breaks up, they kept it. They added a Nestin-class river minesweeper. They added some landing craft, which were transferred to various positions, which were, added some landing craft, transferred some landing craft, all sorts of fun things. And they added some pontoon units. Current force structure. There is I'm not really sure how to describe it. The Kozara, which was technically built for the German Navy in 1939 as a river patrol vessel, and is still in service. If you want to go and look up the Kozara, the modern Kozara, be my guest. But it's classified as a command ship. It wouldn't look out of place as basically a mildly armed ferry. Okay? I want you to go look it up yourself and make your own judgments. This is why I'm not putting a picture of it up here. You have 335, which is their Nestin-class minesweeper. Sorry. And 214, which is pictured up there, not the Nestin one, which is their Type 20 Biscaya-class patrol craft. Also can be used as a bit of a minesweeper. And please note, these ships, the ones at the top, were built in Regensburg in 1953 for the US Rhine River Patrol, and then were handed over to the Yugoslavian Navy's River Flotilla. And currently 111 maintains the ceremonial role as flagship of the flotilla. They also have some landing craft, as mentioned. And they've got a whole suite of other vessels. Basically, I will say this about the Serbian armed forces. They're not afraid to drive if they have any logisticians serving with them who have to maintain their supplies of equipment. And whilst, yes, I do understand the Khosrow was extensively overhauled and modernized in 2013, this was an American vessel built in Germany for the Rhine River Patrol Force. The whole thing is rather an interesting structure. The whole thing is an interesting, oh my lord, what have you put together? To me, the modern force of the Serbian River Flotilla is in needing of a good standardization and a good logistics workout, because honestly, I think it's trying to cause its logisticians to have a panic attack, because everything is different. Everything is different. They've got some stuff built in Nazi Germany era, some stuff built in Yugoslavia, other parts of Yugoslavia, some parts built which are technically built in Germany for the United States, originally United States parts. Some parts built in China. It's just logistically, it's an experience. It really is an experience. And well, they did do an exercise not too long ago, which I suppose we should sort of look at. This is from, and in 2018, I have to say, a lot of people were doing riverine exercises in 2018. Can't think why. Anyone imagine what was going on in 2018 that led to a lot of people doing riverine exercises? Anyone have any ideas? But this was taken from the 2018 Century of Victory exercise. And you see their forces out patrolling. And, yeah. Honestly, these are free nesting class patrol vessels at the front, minesweepers. I'm gonna guess 341 is Novi Sad. Let me expand the picture a bit more. Maybe I can work it out a bit closer. We have 341 Novi Sad. Then we have 335 Apaten. And then we have, sitting over here, 332 Titel. Behind that we have landing craft and some small patrol boats. And basically this is the point of this force. It's all about maneuver from the river. When we talk about amphibious warfare, we often talk about maneuver from the sea. When we talk about littoral conflict, fighting in littorals, we often talking about maneuver assets, about being able to use ships and using support and all these things to maneuver within littorals. Well, the riverine forces are basically that, but in rivers. Yeah, the battles in the American Civil War, during the American Civil Wars on rivers are fun. Ah, Leslie, yes, you've looked up Khosrow and you found out the ship was used to house American soldiers in Germany, and then was used as hotel restaurants, and then, yeah, it has a life. It lives. That ship lives. Oh, I can't not show it to you all now. So yeah, browse, I've got it somewhere on here. Where have I got it? File, yes, that one. If someone ever looks in my file, there's going to be so many suspicious Russian character in acrylic. Images. There you go. This is the Khosra. This is honestly a warship. Technically, it's a command ship. Capable of transporting 250 soldiers. It's got 20mm Oerlikon AA gun. For whatever good that does. I suppose it's to give you reassurance. Morale. Something. There you go. Viking River Cruiser! Exactly, Leslie! I'm fairly certain some of its some of its sisters designs are, yes. Viking River Cruises. Yeah. Look. The thing is, this is their command ship. This up here is their ceremonial flagship. Command ship, ceremonial flagship. I think they need. I think honestly, again, one of the troubles I have noticed when doing this study and talking about this here at leadership also is, making the case for an oceanic navy is fairly easy in comparison to the river forces, but river forces are just as important, and they're suffering. It's when I start looking at them and going, well, Neston-class river minesweeper keeps turning up. There are still 7 of those active, and there were 16 originally built. And they served in a lot of navies. When were they built? 1976 to 1980. Okay. Alright. So they built lots. They built 16 of them. Okay. What succeeded them? Nothing. Go and type, if you want real fun, and I will do this with you, type River Minesweeper into Google. The River-class minesweeper of the Royal Navy from the 1980s, a last class of fleet minesweepers, shows up. The Neston class then comes up. And if you go a long way down, you find the various Russian projects. Project 151, which is honestly the predecessor of the Neston. And if you look at it, you go, oh, I can see where some of the design choices from Neston came from. But the fact is, riverine warfare, we think warfare at sea has suffered, and it has, from a lack of investment. Riverine warfare is even worse. And the thing is, whilst, yes, drones are certainly coming, as said, though, when you're dealing with mine countermeasures, when you're dealing with wanting to transport actual soldiers and actual personnel, and you probably are going to, because the thing is, you need people to be operating drones and maintaining stuff, and you want to have the firepower, you're going to need these vessels. Honestly, the closest option you have is the CB-90. That is the closest you have. If you wanted to turn around to NATO at this moment and go, you have to rapidly produce something that can do riverine warfare, you're going to be looking at the CB-90. That's pretty much the options available. Will be something on that lines. They can carry mines. They can carry other things. There are... How do I put this politely? There are some very interesting vessels armed with some very interesting mortars. But yeah, the CB-90 similar vessels to that are pretty much your options. Oh yeah, that's the 1259, that's the later one, yeah. That's the latest one really built, and they're built by the Russians. Which rather does lead us into... yeah, interesting mortars. Basically, there have been lots of various attempts to put the mortar, the CB9, the Patria Nemo mortar system onto vessels, and the Swedes planned the Combat Boat 2010. Which was going to be armed with it, but they decided not to buy the mortar system, and so they cancelled the project. But honestly, they might end up going back to it. Because the Nemo mortar is a pretty decent weapon system. But I can honestly see why the British just left mortar gunboats everywhere, and it took till Fisher to get around. They last so long you can't catalogue all the ones you have. Pretty much, just keep crewing them. Nemo mortar system is an interesting automatic mortar system. If you ever want to have a fun time on YouTube, type in Nemo mortar into YouTube and watch the various videos and graphics that come out of it, and then you go, oh, yeah! And you understand why my thing I argue most consistently is for, when I'm talking about various options for the British Armed Forces, especially ground forces, is that I would really like some based on the Boxers, and it does seem you could get it on Boxer, and they do have it, so I'm hoping they actually do deliver it. It'd be useful. The Nemo mortar system is a very useful method of making sure that your opponents understand that you can reach them. We'll leave that to one side. Although mortars are an important thing to talk about. In 1940, the Soviets managed to occupy Bessarabia and Bukovina, which was their first time getting to the Danube. They formed a flotilla almost immediately. Okay? If you want to look up details on Nemo, please do go look it up. There's the publicly listed details which are on Wikipedia. That's all. As ever, the standard rule I apply on this channel is I am not WikiLeaks, I am not War Thunder. Whenever it comes to modern equipment, I will only deal with what's the publicly available information, so therefore I follow what's colloquially termed in academic terms the wiki rule. I.e., is it the figures stated on Wikipedia? If so, that's the figures we use. We might have heard different, we might have heard people chatting stuff in pubs and various things. We're never going to say that. We're going to refer to the publicly declared information, which is the wiki rule. Or the Wikipedia rule. Or, to quote one of my colleagues, who calls it the Wikipedia Free Encyclopedia by the Wikimedia Foundation rule. And I sit there and go, you can show this. Everyone will know what you're talking about. Yeah, I agree, Fur, but it's basically, it just stops me having to deal with people knocking on the door going, "Oh, have you been discussing this?" And go, "No." It's bad enough when I work stuff out without being told it and I'm talking about it online and yeah, end up with fun conversations. Me and Drac Bilge Pumps was brilliant for causing me and Drac to have that fun. Anyway, so the Soviets get there, and they immediately go, right then, we need some forces. So they want to put monitors armed with 102mm, 130mm guns, that lovely weapon which the Soviets always love. Some armoured boats, some transports, and some launches, and have an AA battalion, a fighter squadron, a full company of naval infantry, a machine gun company, and some shore batteries as well. And they even reinforced the flotilla when the Germans started doing a march. But, you know, they got an extra shore battery. They also lost their launches back to the Black Sea Fleet. But, let's be honest, as the Red Army is forced to withdraw, they are forced to disband. Oh, I like the Jane's books, Fur. Nice way, Fred Jane's first books are about the Royal Navy. The thing is, as they're forced to withdraw back, and basically eventually, November 1941, they are forced to disband because the pace of what is often classified as the Romanian German invasion on certain things. And what I will point out, going through some of these sources and to track down things about things like the Soviet Union's Danube flotilla, look at the information, I had to go and look at the Russian sources. And the amount of Russian sources which refer to it, the invasion 1941, as the Romanian German invasion, when you translate. Romania really gets top billing going on here. I will say that. Romania gets top billing. Especially in the battles against the flotillas. And then you realise the reason is because the main people who were fighting the flotilla against the flotilla in the riverine conflict were the Romanians. It was the Romanian Navy which was attacking the Soviet Navy. That was it. Do you want lap time again? Or do you just want a hug? You want a hug, and you want lap time again. Oh, big fluffy beast, up we come. Oh, all right. Oh, good lord. All right. Okay. All right. So can I talk? Hala. Yes, I know you're worried about something. Can I talk? So that's good. So you know, the thing is, they're actually doing quite well in these fights. The Iranian sources and their sources both agree they're pretty evenly matched, and the Red Army, the Soviet forces, maintain a good, strong operation. They manage to support the various troops who are in bridgeheads, try and withdraw them where they can, sustain them where they can't, as best they can, and they do their very best. They are the force which managed to ferry the troops across to Odessa, you know, and get them across the Berg, what's called the Southern Berg, and the Dnieper rivers. They do a lot of options and a lot of guerrilla fighting on rivers, which you can think, oh, can be quite interesting, but you know, it's actually surprisingly possible. Once you're dealing with a river which is in a fairly built-up area and has also got lots of hills and other things around it, you can do surprises on people. And so they do. Now, why have I got Sergei Gorshkov up there? Why haven't I got a Russian river monitor? Well, I've done a video about Russian river monitors. But more importantly than that, fact is, he comes in as commander. He is the commander from April 1944 to December 1944. And he, of course, famously goes on to command the commander of the Soviet Navy, commander-in-chief of the Soviet Navy. One of the reasons he does is because of the sheer number of medals he builds up running riverine operations. He's a riverine specialist at several points in his war service experience. Now, one of the other things is the commander of the flotilla in 1940 was Nikolai Osipowicz Abramovich, who will later become the post-war commander of the Polish Navy. And there's also Rear Admiral Alexander Frolov, who goes on to become the chief of staff on the Pacific Fleet during the war against Japan at the end of World War II, when the Soviets actually joined that war. And I will say that command of the force of Danube Flotilla is basically a glowing star to go on to senior ranks. When you start looking at the commanders of what they go on to become commanders of the Black Sea Fleet, they go on to command the Soviet 7th Fleet, they go on to such great big senior posts afterwards. So it's a really prestigious position during World War II and not immediately afterwards. Dan. Hello, you jumped down now. Have you jumped down? You're going to stay down? Oh. You are flexible for your size. You want a biscuit? Okay. You came up, you said hello to everyone, you think you deserve a biscuit now. Seriously, you perform entirely for poodle tricks, don't you? I should never have let you watch Scooby. You have drawn far too many inspirations from that dog. Oh. Now, as the troops advance, though, of course, they get back to the flotilla. They get back to the Danube. And one of the reasons they do is because we often talk about how the Russians were dependent upon importing trucks from America that came in the Lend-Lease, and we talk about Russian Soviet logistics. Well, here's the thing. The Germans and the Soviets were chewing up the ground as they were advancing. They destroyed a lot of the railways. They destroyed a lot of the bridges, a lot of the infrastructure. And to keep the supplies going, to sustain their forces, they needed the rivers. They needed the Danube. Look again. If you look at the Soviet lines of advance in World War II, and then you put a map of the Danube along it, you'll find quite a lot of the key logistics points for them along that advance are connected to the Danube. It's amazing. When you sort of get to that sort of point, you start looking at, yeah, the Danube is pretty darn important. It's where they're carrying the supplies through. It's where they're getting a lot of the supplies from. And it's because they have to. Because there aren't many other options, and they can carry a lot of supplies. But you can only do that if you've got a flotilla securing them, if you've got a flotilla protecting them, making it possible. No, it's when you start to look at the January-March offensive. And you sort of go, well, hang on, what are you talking about, Alex? And I'm going, well, have a look at the various rivers which sustain it. There's the Vizula, there is the Osa, and there is the Danube. And you start to look at their result, and then they jump to the Elbe. And, you know, they're using these rivers to sustain them, to help them maneuver, to help them move their logistics. So they only have to get their logistics maybe from, let's say, Vienna to Prague, to Berlin. And they can get those up, you know, if they get they get their sort of logistics from the Black Sea to Vienna, they can then get it up to Prague. From Prague, they can land on the Elbe, get it up to Dresden, maybe a bit further, and get it nice and close to Berlin. Or, alternatively, if they can get the stuff to the Osa, they can get it practically to Berlin. So they can get it through the Baltic. As far as military logistics is concerned. So yeah. Now, as they started featuring in things, they were important to what's called the Belgrade offensive, the Budapest offensive, and the Vienna offensives. Rather surprising. Again, look at them. They are basically fighting their way along the Danube River. Ad time. Oh. Well, it should be doing the ads automatically. So, if you're not receiving ads, that means you're you're either Premier. You're either is Premier or something, or you're a member. Potentially. I put the ads onto auto, so people who have seen the ads can tell me what they're like, because they're every 30 minutes. Well, yes, but they should be every 30 minutes, the ads. YouTube should be doing that, and I'm happy with that. Same as Twitch. Now, using all these things, premium. I want to say Premiere for some reason. Using all these forces, they're conducting assaults. They are, the Germans are actually trying to use sinking vessels to block landings. Well, the ads are on auto, so I'm no longer in control of them. So we'll see what YouTube does with it. Hello to Stafford's mum. Yeah, I have no idea. YouTube officially has got its own control, and it's every 30 minutes it's supposed to be doing an ad. It seems to be happy with it, so let's not complain to YouTube. The Germans were sinking roughly, I think it's 200 and some... 200. I think it's a little over 200 vessels. Were sunk to try and block landings. But yeah, the flotilla just keeps on pushing through. It's often horrendous amounts of firepower, but again, if you look at the monitors they're bringing to this fight, at the forces they're bringing, they are bringing full-on gunboats, which are basically floating tanks. Honestly, the Soviet design of a river gunboat is, let's make a tank which floats. And in fact, the flotilla managed to do an assault on both ends of the Imperial Bridge in Vienna, which allowed the Red Army to secure the bridge intact, because there were demolition cables, etc. So if it hadn't been for doing a simultaneous landing at both ends, although I'm not really sure if it was a surprise, it's often... How do I put this? If I get up my map of Vienna, you can start to see what if I can find that. Yeah. So I'm looking for the Rheinsbruck, aren't I? It's the Rheinsbruck. Yeah, there we go. So, if I go to Windows Capture 4, yeah. So this is the Imperial Bridge, Vienna, the Rheinspruch. And if I can, let's see if I can get a pedestrian position to go look at it. Yeah, there's one span of it. And it's separated by an island in the middle. I'm gonna wonder if I can hop up there. Let me hop. You won't let me hop? You won't? Okay. No. I don't want to see the graffiti. I don't need to see the graffiti. It's like every other city. I'm on the bridge, but I'm not on the bridge. I think. Well, at least I'm on the bridge. So, yeah. This bridge, they surprised, is the line used. And you might notice there's a small problem, to my mind, with surprising this bridge. Considering the angle they're coming from, which is up here, you might achieve a level of strategic surprise, especially if you're coming from down here at this area. Probably, let's say, down this area, I think, from memory, is where you roughly had the formations. But, that's an awfully long way to get to this bridge. Not that one. This one. You've got all this straight. It's not going to be necessarily a surprise. It's going to be a case of you're able to get there and attack in formation before we can hold it. It's a bit of, maybe a bit of a strategic surprise, but it shouldn't be a tactical surprise. You should be able to see them coming. But the thing is, you're able to launch from close enough and able to push up close enough and fast enough that you achieve, that you manage to get inside their command and control loop so you can get there before they start firing anything off. And again, they show it like this, it gets even more complicated. What speed? Yeah, that's the other thing. The Soviet river monitors. They're not exactly the most fast vessels. They're World War II. You can actually get a good book, which I've got somewhere, which is the Soviet river gunboats of World War II. Most ones we're talking about in this point in the Second World War, we're looking at things like the BK type and the Zelenkov type, which are not particularly fast. They have an official top speed of 19 knots, which is, okay, respectable for a riverboat. Not really as fast as you'd want it to be, though, to try and achieve anything else. It's amazing the joys of having multiple layers of notes open, trying to track down everything. Let's get rid of that. So yeah, they're not exactly fast. I don't think there was actually surprise involved. I think basically managing to seize both ends was the good thing, and managing to get there within the time taken. And for that, First Guards Armoured Boat Detachment, yes, I'm not joking, that was the name of the unit, got the Order of Kutsov. Second class, not first class. They didn't deserve first class for that. Riverine conflict in the 80s and 90s in the Balkans was limited. The Serbian forces tended to use it for maneuver, but the Danube, again, if you look at it, is really not a major part of the area where they're fighting over. There are other rivers which they get involved in, but not as much. And yeah, they used a lot of smoke. But again, if your enemy is launching smoke at you and it's making it difficult for you to spot them, but it's not surprising you. They're not going, oh, there's smoke there, I wonder what's happening. No, usually you go, I see smoke. Machine guns, fire! Or mortars, fire! Or everything you've got, fire! And especially if you're trying to defend a bridge in a city battle, and you know the other forces managed to drive your flotilla back from there, yeah, smoke on river. Fire! Smoke regularly. Yes, there might well be smoke regularly, but I'd still be firing something into it if I could. But yeah, there's They do a lot during mainly World War I and World War II. Post World War II, well, how do I put this politely? Post World War II, especially once they get control for the period during their agreements with the Warsaw Pact, etc., when the other part and the other nations supposed to not have them, they are basically focused on some river monitors, which are there again to secure crossings if they need to cross things and need to push up the Danube. But again, heavily minesweepers. And they do. They do. Now, then we have Yugoslavia. Now, I already said that, honestly, the Yugoslavian Navy is kind of the Serbian Navy with some extra bits added on. And it pretty much is. The Serbian River Flotilla is pretty much what you're going to be looking for. But, and I mean this in the nicest possible way, when you have Yugoslavia at its hard point, then things change. They have a command ship, the Sir, the Novi Sad. It's honestly where I hunted down the picture of the Jadar, but it wasn't around. Hello! I know you want nap time again, but let me talk about... Can you let me talk about the Kingdom of Yugoslavia, please? Okay. So, they have several different mining barrage groups. That's what their main force. They only have one monitor group. Their vessels are mostly various of the Austro-Hungarian recovered vessels. As I said, they get the Vada and the Sava, which are both Sava-class river monitors. And they get the Drava, which is an ENS class, and the Morova. Now, the Morova, as we've already talked about, basically ends up having an interesting time with Croatia at various points and Hungary, and it goes to everyone. The M's class, well, they also had fun with everyone. But what we're looking at, I think, I'm trying to remember which vessel this is. Because they like to change on me. It's not any of the big Austrian ones. No. They also have, the monitors pretty much are their critical ships, but they're mostly scuttled in 1941. One of the interesting things is the Drava, which is an Enns class river monitor, is claimed to be sunk by Luftwaffe on the 12th of April 1941. But all the rest of the class of the ships were sunk on the 11th and 12th, 1941, and I think the Drava might well have been sunk herself by her own crew. The three monitors have been had scuttled the night before. Drava was attacked by Ju-87s. And she gets hit by 9 Stukas with very little impact. But the 9th bomb, and they shoot down 3 Stukas, or the attacking aircraft. She's attacked by possibly as many as 12, and 9 managed to score hits on her. 1 bomb hit that goes right down her funnel, explodes in her engine room, and kills 54 of her crew. Now, the thing is, she sunk, and her senior officers are killed, but the people who survive from her include people like her AA gunners who have done great work, but they also they suggest that they did more. They suggest that she was severely damaged but not yet sinking, and they made sure she sunk so she couldn't be captured. But there is a whole argument because many people just go, well, she was sinking. I would say myself that the odds are a bomb going off in your engine room of any vessel is not going to be good. It's really not going to be good. It's going to do a lot of damage. With that being said, though, she's a monitor. She is not necessarily operating in the deepest of water anyway. And even though the Danube is quite deep, she's not necessarily the deepest of deep waters. And yes, she's lost a lot of crew in those attacks, but she's had 9 hits, of which, we're considering she's lost all those crew, but 9 were all taken out by the. Whilst it's recorded being taken out by an engine room hit, they couldn't. There's no way you could take out. Let's put it this way: there's no way you can take out the first officer and the captain and the positions they're in on the vessel by hitting the engine room, unless the shrapnel does amazing choreography. Okay. So the other hits must have registered impact and killed crew above decks. With that being said, then, you've lost a lot of personnel, you've got a ship in a critical condition, you probably don't have enough personnel to do proper damage control, which means she might be left in a bad position, but she might still be recovered by the enemy. So you make sure she cannot be recovered, and that's what I think probably happened. There's some fun going on in the chat I should be watching. Oh, yeah, there is also... the fact is, I would... Again, the accounts attack on the bridge in Vienna is... They were under fire. The forces defending Vienna were firing. You have to remember, one of the advantages of withdrawing on Vienna and places like that is they have huge ammunition dumps in them. And they are huge head of supplies. You know, you're defending a place which already has the supplies there. You've fallen back on your logistics rather than needing to bring your logistics with you. That's the advantage for when you're withdrawing. You tend to fall back on your logistics. You should, well, if you're sensible, you fall back on your logistics. If you're stupid, you fall back away from your logistics and allow the enemy to drive themselves between you and your logistics, and at which point you either have to rebuild everything or you die. So, with that being said, summary time. And this is where things get interesting, because I technically have lost track of how long we've been streaming for this evening. I think it's roughly 3 hours and 3.5 hours, but I'm not 100% sure. I do apologise, because the videos have decided to split. I'll be having a conversation restream and a few other things later. It's amazing how the live channels are the ones which have the issues. Goodness gracious me. Now, summary. River flotillas, they are always about... Well, they are always about keeping up the capabilities of presence. They're always about maintaining your presence. And they're always about protecting your trade and your infrastructure. The thing about a flotilla is, if you consider it, the whole point of naval warfare and the main asset of naval warfare is the ability to maneuver around 7/10 of the water surface and being able to turn up where you need to be, where you need to, when you need to. You cannot do that on a river. The traditional advantage of naval forces of being able to maneuver without being able to see coming is lost. There is a reason why the Soviets always include mobile artillery as part of their riverine forces. There is a reason they do that. It's because if you can secure a position with enough artillery, or you can secure a bend in the river, etc., or, you know, a suitable position with artillery coverage, you can prevent stuff moving up and down that river. It's what the American Civil War was all about. The amount of times you talk about battlefields and supplies being maneuvered of various fronts, that is what's being talked about. That is what's being done. And the thing is, if you realise that and you accept that, and it's kind of like logistics, you accept the impact of roads and railways. They are pre-built. They will go at the places they go, and therefore they can be protected. They can be covered by artillery fairly reasonably. You need to work out how to push them through. The thing is, though, with a deep enough river and a good enough hull, you can take a far more powerful vessel than you can a land option. Now, admittedly, you can probably produce a lot more tanks than you can vessels, but let's be honest, the whole thing which pertains to having a lot of tanks is you have the space to maneuver them. You don't have the space to maneuver a vessel in a river. That's the other point. You see, all those criteria of warfare you usually use do not necessarily are reversed in riverine warfare. In naval warfare, we talk about being able to disperse a task group around a maneuver and being able to show up where you don't expect us. You can't really do that in a river. In land warfare, we normally talk about volume and numbers and spreading the capability out. Well, you can't really do it on a river. You don't necessarily have the space to maneuver that many assets. So the last area of the last part of warfare, we're really focusing in on a few decent, heavily well-built assets comes true is river warfare. Because of the criteria situation. You're going to run into artillery, you know that. So what you have to do is you have to have A, the ability to destroy that artillery, and B, to take a couple of hits on the chin. Like the Austro-Hungarians had to do in World War One. Like everyone had to do. You have to take some hits to you, be able to take some hits to you, and keep on chugging. American Civil War is same. They're all the same. So, what's really interesting is quite how they balance how thick they're going to make the armour, because it must be really tempting, especially the front armour, to make it as thick as possible. And I'm very surprised with the Austro-Hungarians that they didn't just try and devise a riverine boat which actually had armour which was battleship grade on the front. So it could just point its way down the river and just carry on chugging. But the trouble is, once you show your sides to the enemy, then you don't have that same thick armour. But hopefully you destroyed them as you went past. Before you went past. You know, it's something which it would have been really interesting to see. There's also the fact that you have river crossings. Now, the thing is, the bigger a river is, the more navigable it is, the more difficult it is to cross. There is a river not far from me here, which I can literally hop, skip, jump over. There are quite literally stepping stones. You do not need for a force to cross that river. Technically, if they don't mind getting their feet wet, they can walk through the water. Me, today, I decided that, frankly, I was going to try and do the stepping stones. I thought it was fun. But often, I have taken my shoes and socks off, carried them in my hand, and just wandered straight out. Why? It's fairly clear water. It's not very deep. I might as well just cross to the other side, and it saves me about 5 minutes walking down the river to get to the stepping stones, to cross, to walk 5 minutes back. And because of what I'm walking on the other side, on both sides of the river, my feet will dry off fairly quickly. But it was pretty cold today, and I'm not stupid. So I went to the stepping stones. But it's a really nice thing to do on a cold day. On a warm day, I mean. Now, if we take that again, we move from that, well, the realistic point we're talking through is once you're dealing with a river which is of sufficient size to be a heavily navigable water, not just a canal, a heavily navigable water. You're dealing with a river which is wide enough that you are going to need craft across it, which means you're going to need to provide firepower to get them across. And that's where the gunboats come in. That's where this firepower comes in. That's a key part of the utility of these flotillas. There's a reason why I'm summarizing this video with a picture of a landing craft above my head, or rather slightly to, well, there. Up to my right. Because ultimately, these rivers are about the movements of goods. They're about the movements of supplies, they're about the movement of everything, and they're about making it work. But these rivers are also, at this point, they are not able to be crossed easily. And that's the difference. You know, it's the interesting thing when you talk about it, and this is one of the reasons also why, it's conversely why the D-Day doesn't count technically, counts technically not as an amphibious operation, doesn't necessarily technically count as an amphibious operation, because due to the nature and changing size of rivers, the wording around river operations, i.e. what's called shore-to-shore maneuvers rather than ship-to-shore maneuvers, is worded as such because it can get so large. You see, at its lowest scale, shore-to-shore maneuver is a platoon crossing on foot. At its largest scale, it's a division or more using multiple landing craft to get from one side to the other, because we are talking hundreds of meters across, if not wider. And so it has to be written that way. Which is why once you get to, well, amphibious operation, which is technically a ship-to-shore maneuver, where you are basing from a ship, which means you must have at least overnighted on the ship to get to shore before you launch to shore, and you've organised yourselves on the ship. That's amphibious operations, and that's why it's called riverine operations. If it's shore-to-shore maneuver, if it's from literally, if you go from one shore and you're getting to the other. It's the fun thing. There are, this is the joy. The reason it's written as it is because of the very complexity and the very vagrancy and variance of riverine operations. Means that you've written amphibious operations definitions in such a way that it does mean that the most well-known amphibious operation in the history of the world, the D-Day operation, the D-Day landings, fits not the criteria for an amphibious operation, but the criteria for a riverine operation. Anyway, with that being said, questions. And then I'll be on Discord in a bit. After I have my own biometers. Biobreak. I said. Huge. Zan Freeman, this is like Stonehenge not being a henge. Ew, don't get me started on that one, please don't. I have a neighbour who's a specialist in henges who literally... I had 4.5 hours on Monday. And I was sitting going, I'm a historian, but I think I've just about found one of those areas of history which I'm going to leave to the specialists. And we all know how much of a geek I am about history. I love history. I go on all over history, but yeah, I am. That left me on one side going, no. Next time I have a casual real-life discussion about D-Day, I will call it a river crossing. Well, that's the thing. Because the technical definition of amphibious operation is a ship-to-shore maneuver, and it has to be based from the ships. Whereas a riverine crossing is a shore-to-shore maneuver, and because they do all the basing and organisation of for D-Day on the shore, and then just use the ships as transit as connectors, as transit assets, that's technically why it's technically a riverine operation. It's a fun one. But do note, that was the technical reason used by the US Army to say why the US Marine Corps could not be involved. Also, there was the US Army did have a whole argument of whether or not the US Marines could get involved. Which is also why there is a US Coast Guard presence, and the Royal Navy, and the Royal Navy and the US Coast Guard are the ones providing most landing craft and most support. John Shea, I'm talking about the whole argument of Stonehenge, whether Stonehenge is a henge or not. I leave that to the specialists. Okay? I have found the limit at which point of my love of history. Apparently that debate is it. And please note, before anyone does ask about this, technically I think that it all comes back to because the main ditch is external to the main bank of the earthworks around the henge. I don't think there's any Knights of Green Front. I don't think there is anything such as an ideal gunboat. I said I would like something, it's one of those scenarios where some of the rules you often preach when talking about ships and ship designs come up are actually different, where some of the principles of war are turned on their head because of the realities of riverine warfare. But yeah, it's not true. It's a whole thing of that for everyone there's going to be a slightly different basis, because let's put it this way: if you're Romania today and you look at the sheer length of Danube you operate on, if we go back to this map back here. If you look at Romania and the sheer length, they're going to require a very different gunboat. They're a very different river vessel, than Bulgaria's, which operates on a slightly shorter length, or Serbia is, because they operate in there, so they're going to want it to be focused on their part of the Danube, and then Hungary is, or then Austria is, or Germany is. Okay? Each of them are going to have very different requirements for what they need to do. So the fact they're operating on the same river, it's fun. Yeah, so basically in many ways it looks as if the Stonehenge structure is actually defensive, or rather the ditch is arranged as you would for a defensive position. Although, there is also, how do I put this politely? There is also the whole fun of that. There is actually another bank on the outside of the. Yeah, I'm not getting it. I'm not remembering this whole conversation. I had it for hours, and I was very good. I let me put it this way. My mum told me I was very polite to the new neighbours, and I listened dutifully, and I was very polite. I did not run from the room screaming or make an excuse. I was polite. I sat there. I chatted. Yeah. I now have another neighbour whose face I've mentally added to my mental list of if see coming, run, avoid. I have a signal to train with a dog. Raleigh, you need to sniff that way now. Oh. Oh. Nothing mention, or a henge is protecting the outside world from the inside. Potentially. Whereas Stonehenge is protecting the what's inside the circle from the outside world. No. They firmly do not. They don't believe aliens made Stonehenge or anything like that. No, they just very much interested in henges because their grandfather was involved in some of the archaeology and all the other stuff. And honestly, yeah. Hinges are fine things. I don't think they need alien construction. Let's be honest. There's a lot of things. Well, usually the problem comes back to is that often current generations often have problems figuring out that previous generations were actually quite smart. That just because they haven't developed the technology and some of the systems we have doesn't mean they don't have ways of doing things. A good example I would use is drawers, cabinets. If you've seen the furniture produced in the 18th century, it's really quite amazing. Some of the artistry, some of the woodwork is really, really quite cool. And once you sort of look at some of the early 19th century stuff, it's also really good. Now, sometimes we look at what we have today and we're going, wow, this is great. Look at how easily this drawer glides in and glides out. All these things. But you look at it and go, well, hang on. Whilst we are using far more precise tools, we're using laser cutters, all sorts of systems to create these things, which are far more advanced than they had access to. It's not really of the same standard, is it? It's not really as beautiful or as enamored. So yeah, that I would argue you have to be very careful about presuming things are automatic, that we are smarter necessarily because we have more technology, and that they couldn't do it because they didn't have the same technology. They did it in different ways. That is sometimes the point I make out. Just think about this. The Iron Age hill forts, in many ways, are massive construction projects. Almost far more difficult works than Stonehenge. Because you are literally terraforming the land. Castles, all these things. We don't have debates about who made those. Go and look at some of the cathedrals which were built. Think about all the technology that goes into them. And just remember the technology which goes into those cathedrals to build them. Compared to what we have today, it's nothing. And yeah, there are temples in Japan that are assembled without any iron, wood, or copper, nails, or even wooden nails. Yeah. Zebedee is woofing and saying hello. Yes. I think my sister's okay and alive. She is alive.
Yeah, I'm just trying to logistically plan for people in the house tomorrow so that they can get to these white magic things.
What are you doing?
Yes.
Oh, radiators. Okay. Yeah. You said white magic things. So nice way. There are lots of white magic things. There's the network ports. There's all sorts of things which are white magic things.
Zebedee refers to them as magic heat for creating things. And by the way, I've discovered what the temperature is.
What?
22.5 in my bedroom now.
How?
I don't know.
I think someone has jammed your radiator on full blast. Have you sure it's not Zebedee with a spanner? Has he nicked from one of my spanners?
He's complaining about the heat. He and I are the two. He says he's got a double coat. He doesn't need it.
Oh.
Is that empty?
Yes, but so are those three. Oh, language, Karen! Language! We run a PG channel, and I'm not getting the blame for you.
I'm not swearing. I'm just asking for rubbish.
There you go. Yeah, these got knocked on the floor earlier by Riley. I was planning on getting them out later. Yeah. Thank you.
Swearing will go away.
Thank you. I do have proof it wasn't me. So, the hot water pipes are on. No, the radiator in my sister's room seems to go boiling hot the moment anything flicks on. Yeah. You want a good example today. Why is it that Britain can consistently build some and British tunnelers get consistently called by various countries all around the world to go and work on their tunnels when they're building undergrounds and under cities? It's because Britain has been hasn't basically stopped building underneath tunnels of underground lines underneath London in a century, and they're still not stopping. Crossrail 1 will be finished, and then they'll launch into Crossrail 2. That's what happens. Anyway, I'm going to say thank you very much, everyone, as we've now got off naval history completely, and we're now talking about engineering projects. We've got David Farragut next week. We've got lots of stuff coming up, and yeah, thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed. I hope you found it interesting. I certainly did. The video is going to be... The Long Patrol video, when it comes out next week, is going to be slightly different than this. But I wanted this to be basically an introduction to these are the flotillas. How do I put this? It probably would have been slightly different if I hadn't been in the middle of the stream. If Restream hadn't decided to stop streaming to everything else. I still do not know why I did that. Fun times. Take care, everyone, and thank you for watching. Thank you, everyone, all the admins for assisting, and just thank you for being here. Hope you enjoyed it. On both Twitch and YouTube. Doodles. These are the recorded videos which will be up on YouTube on those dates, usually. They're usually every Tuesday recorded video comes out on this topic. This year is the year of leadership. Last year was the year of the aircraft carrier. And yeah, longer term, if we go back to this one, you'll see what the Thursday video, in a couple of weeks, Thursday video is going to be. The Admiralty managed to get a blank check from research and development from 1900s onwards. That should be a fun one. Take care, everyone. Take care and have fun. Bye. I'll be on Discord in a second after a quick bio break.